Welcome back to Sleepy Saga Histories, where quiet stories from long ago are told by firelight to help you drift away. Tonight, you'll journey through a forgotten moment in time, a soft thread in the fabric of ancient life, slow and unhurried. Let the day fall away, your breath slow, and if this story keeps you company, you're always welcome back to the fire. The last glow of the Roman sun dips behind terracotta roofs, casting warm orange hues across the tiled domes and stone streets of the city. Shadows stretch along colonnaded porticos, and the bustling noise of the forum gives way to something softer, less hurried, more subdued. The night begins not suddenly but gently, as it always has. In the distance, the hum of conversation quiets. Carts roll more slowly along uneven paving stones, and 100 oil lamps flicker into life. Evening descends on Rome like a linen shroud, thin, light, and full of subtle texture. In the domus of a middling Roman family, wealthy enough to own a home, but far from the luxury of senatorial life, the night is carefully prepared for. The family's main meal, the cena, has been eaten earlier in the afternoon, followed perhaps by a bit of rest or leisure. The atrium is calm now. The impluvium, a shallow pool in the centre of the home, reflects the last light of the day as slaves finish tidying up. The air carries the faint scent of olive oil, fading wine, and cooked lentils. One can still hear the soft splash of collected rainwater or the delicate steps of a servant laying out the master's bed coverings. The Roman bedroom, or cubiculum, is not always what one might expect. For the elite, bedrooms are often small and sparsely decorated. Walls are painted with mythological scenes or simple geometric patterns. A narrow window might face a courtyard, but shutters are drawn closed at night to keep in the warmth and block out city noise. The bed itself, called a lectus, is typically a wooden frame with webbing of rope or leather thongs, covered with a straw mattress and layered with woolen blankets. In colder months, extra coverings or even animal hides are added. Pillows are filled with feathers or wool. Though the Romans did not indulge in overplush comfort, sleep was a necessity, not a luxury. Servants moved quietly, laying out the master's sleepwear, perhaps a light tunic, and fetching a chamber pot, positioned discreetly in the corner. In more refined households, a bronze oil lamp is placed beside the bed, its wick trimmed and lit. The flame flickers and dances, casting long, gentle shadows across the painted walls. The room smells faintly of wax and old wood. There is no clock ticking, only the subtle hiss of the lamp and the occasional bark of a distant dog. Outside, the streets are not entirely still. While the bulk of daily commerce has ended, the Subura, the city's most densely packed and infamous district, is still stirring. Laughter echoes from taverns, sandals scrape against stone, and carts continue to rattle through narrow alleyways, some bearing goods, others empty. Vendors call out the last of their wares, and beggars settle into nooks for the night. It is a city that slumbers in stages, never all at once. But for most Roman citizens, the body begins to yield to rest as darkness thickens. The vigiles, Rome's night watch, patrol the streets in pairs. They carry torches and wooden staves, tasked with putting out fires and keeping general order. Their steps, rhythmic and calm, provide a sense of peace to those trying to drift into sleep. It is not uncommon for a faint voice to murmur a short prayer to Somnus, the god of sleep, or to place a small charm beneath the pillow, an amulet carved from ivory, or a stone etched with protective symbols. In the wealthier insulae or apartment buildings, sleep can be a little harder to come by. These multi-level structures, often poorly built, are crowded and noisy. Thin walls do little to muffle the sound of neighbours stirring or arguments rising through the night. Smoke from oil lamps clings to the air, and warmth from the day lingers well into the evening. Families might share beds or sleep on straw mats on the floor. Yet even here, in the cramped quarters of everyday life, there is a rhythm to nightfall. A mother sings softly to a child. A husband wraps himself in a coarse blanket. A girl turns over, dreams already taking shape behind closed eyes. Sleep in ancient Rome is not one long, uninterrupted stretch. Most Romans sleep in two segments, a pattern called segmented sleep by modern historians. The first stretch begins shortly after sundown, lasting until around midnight. This is followed by a period of wakefulness, often lasting an hour or more, before returning to sleep until dawn. During this interval, Romans might rise to relieve themselves, stoke a fire, or reflect quietly. Some might read by lamplight, pray, or even converse softly with others in the household. Far from being considered insomnia, this interlude was viewed as natural, a time for rest within rest. Dreams, too, were not taken lightly. Romans believed sleep was a time when the soul wandered, when the gods or the dead could communicate through visions. Dream interpretation was a common practice, and many Romans kept dream manuals or consulted oneirocritics, professional interpreters. A dream of flight might be seen as a warning, a dream of water as a sign of cleansing or emotional turmoil. The philosopher Cicero once wrote of dreams as echoes of the soul's conversation with itself. Night progressed, and the oil lamp burned lower. In the countryside, the hush of the fields blanketed farmhouses and villas. Crickets chirped under the eaves, and the wind moved gently through olive trees. In such quiet, Roman peasants might sleep more soundly than their urban counterparts, though their days were longer and harder. A farmer would rest his weary back against straw-stuffed bedding, his hands still calloused and stained from labour. Chickens dozed in coops nearby, and the low breath of oxen could be heard in the stables. Slaves, depending on their role, found rest in brief and varying moments. Some slept on straw mats in corridors or kitchens, ready to rise at the slightest call. Others, such as tutors or household managers, were given private quarters, small but separate. For them, sleep was functional, not restorative. They were expected to rise before their masters and retire well after. Even so, many found moments of peace in the long Roman night, their breathing falling into rhythm with the flicker of dying embers or the cooling stones beneath their bedding. Time moved differently by lamp and starlight. The silence was thicker, more meaningful. There were no ticking clocks or glowing screens, only the long, slow hush of night. Far above the rooftops of Rome, the stars begin to turn their ancient courses. The moon, whether full, crescent, or absent, casts a pale light over tiled roofs and temple columns. From the Palatine to the Aventine, the city lies in layers, sleeping unevenly. The hum of the Tiber just beyond the bridges flows steadily beneath it all, a sound older than the empire itself. In a noble's home, someone stirs. Perhaps it is the master of the house, rising during that brief waking interlude that most Romans experience in the depth of night. He sits upright, letting the linen blanket fall to his waist. The air is cool against his skin. He swings his feet onto the tiled floor and reaches for the oil lamp, still flickering beside his bed. The shadows cast by its flame shift like spirits across the frescoed wall, a painting of Mercury in flight, or Diana in the woods, watching silently. Sleep in Rome is full of ritual and practicality. It's not only about beds or chambers, but the entire approach to rest as part of the human experience. For wealthier Romans, sleep was a component of health, salus, and tied to both philosophy and medicine. Galen, the physician of emperors, wrote extensively about the need for proper sleep, noting that digestion, mood, and clarity of thought all hinged upon the quality of one's nightly rest. He advised against sleeping too soon after a large meal, and recommended that one's head remain slightly elevated. In contrast, the lower classes, artisans, and tradespeople had no luxury to ponder such things. Their sleep came from necessity, exhaustion. They worked until the light failed, ate what they could, and lay down wherever there was space. Many lived in insula, the tall tenement blocks of Rome, cramped, flammable, and noisy. Entire families often shared a single room, if not a single bed. Privacy was rare, quiet, rarer still. And yet even in these modest rooms, Romans clung to routine. A simple cup of watered wine might be sipped before sleep. Children were told stories passed down through generations. Tales of old Rome, of strange omens or brave ancestors. These were not bedtime stories in the modern sense, but teachings woven into sleep, meant to shape character, memory, and identity. Outside, the vigiles continue their slow patrols, their torches bobbing through the streets. Occasionally, they tap their wooden staffs against the ground, announcing their presence. Rome has no public clocks, and time at night is marked loosely by the divisions of the Vigiliae, 4 night watches, each lasting about 3 hours. It's a system inherited from the military, and though few civilians live by it consciously, it lends a rhythm to the night all the same. Inside a humble workshop near the Trastevere district, a potter lies on his back, soot still under his fingernails. The day's clay dust clings to his sleeves. His wife sleeps beside him, their baby between them, wrapped in rough wool. The family's tools hang from hooks on the wall. Beside the hearth, the coals glow faintly, giving just enough warmth to keep the chill at bay. Sleep here is honest, if not peaceful. Every groan of the wooden beams above, every scurry of a rat on the rooftop might wake them. But when they do sleep, it is the deep, dreamless kind that follows honest labour. Meanwhile, in a villa beyond the city walls, the countryside embraces a different kind of silence. Cicadas long quiet, owls now glide between olive branches. The domus here is spacious, the cubiculum airy and cool. A slave, tasked with tending the household's night needs, waits silently on a stool outside the master's chamber. She must remain alert in case she's called. Her own sleep will come later, in stolen moments just before dawn, on a thin blanket beside the kitchen fire. In the more spiritual corners of Rome, night is not just for resting, it is a liminal time, the hour when dreams arrive, when the divine draws near. Many Romans believe that sleep brings them closer to the gods. Some even visit the temples of Asclepius, god of healing, where they practice incubatio, the act of sleeping within the temple, in hopes of receiving a healing dream. The temple priest would later interpret these dreams, diagnosing illness or prescribing remedies. For others, it is the lares and panates, household spirits, who receive silent offerings before bed. A crumb of bread, a whisper of thanks, a drop of wine spilled on the floor. In doing so, Romans hoped for protection through the night, against fire, against thieves, against illness or nightmares. These small rituals offer a sense of safety in a world still full of uncertainty. But despite this careful preparation, the night has its dangers. Rome is a city vulnerable to fire, especially in the crowded districts. A single overturned lamp, a gust of wind through an open shutter, and an entire insula might burn before the watch arrives. Hence, wealthier Romans insist their lamps be placed in bronze holders or extinguished entirely before sleep. And there are thieves too, cut-purses and burglars who know how to climb narrow ledges or creep through open windows. The darkness provides cover, locks are uncommon, and many rely on dogs, alert slaves, or simply the honour of neighbours. In some homes, metal bells are strung from door handles to act as makeshift alarms. Still, most Romans sleep without fear. The city may groan and shift, but it is the heart of the empire, the belly of civilization, and night, no matter how deep, always ends. As the second half of the night approaches, so too does the second sleep. The house quiets again. The embers crackle one last time before sinking into ash. Pillows are fluffed, blankets tucked in. In this moment, all across Rome, from the noble's villa to the street-side vendor's attic loft, bodies curl, spines rest, minds drift, and dreams return. The dreams of ancient Romans were not trifles. They were considered messages, sometimes divine, sometimes ominous. It was not uncommon for a man to rise in the morning and recount his visions to a family member or slave, seeking meaning. A soldier might dream of eagles and take it as a sign of valour. A merchant might dream of sinking ships and cancel a voyage. Emperors employed dream interpreters, and philosophers like Artemidorus wrote volumes cataloguing dream symbols, believing the sleeping mind revealed hidden truths about the soul, the body, and even the future. But not all Roman sleep was restful or symbolic. Nightmares plagued the anxious and ill. They called it incubus, a sensation of weight on the chest, of paralysis, what we now understand as sleep paralysis. The Romans blamed spirits, demons, or even curses. Amulets were worn around the neck or hung on bedroom doors, inscribed with protective words. Charms of Mercury or Hercules, or phallic talismans, believed to repel evil, were common. For those tormented by troubled sleep, these small relics were the only defence against what the mind might conjure. For many Romans, the materials of sleep were humble. Most slept on straw-stuffed mattresses or simple wooden beds with lattice supports. In wealthier homes, beds were often covered in woven cloth, with wool or feather-stuffed pillows. Poorer families shared mats, pallets, or even bare floors. A blanket, straggula, might be linen in summer or coarse wool in winter. There were no duvets or plush mattresses, no silk pyjamas. The bedding reflected the station, and the season shaped the routines. Romans did not sleep naked, as some later cultures might, but in tunics or simple shifts, rarely changed unless they were soiled. In colder months, the bedchamber became a small fortress against the chill. Braziers were used, but carefully. Smoke and fire were real threats. Most relied on thick walls, heavy curtains, and layers of wool. Some homes had heated floors, hypercosts, but these were luxuries. In rural villas, families might sleep beside animals, their warmth a welcome contribution to the night. Noise was another constant presence. The city of Rome, even in sleep, never truly quieted. Barking dogs, clattering carts, arguing neighbours, the song of drunks, or the clanging of a late-night blacksmith. These sounds filtered through thin shutters or cracks in masonry. Juvenal, the satirist, wrote bitterly of sleepless nights caused by urban noise. Only the wealthiest, high above the street level, in stone-built rooms, might enjoy a measure of silence, for most sleep came not from calm but fatigue. And yet, despite these obstacles, sleep was essential. Romans understood that poor sleep meant poor health, poor decision-making and weakness. Farmers rose with the sun, but they went to bed early. Artisans burned oil into the night, but might nap during the heat of day. There was no single sleep pattern across society. It bent to the rhythms of work, light, and weather. Midday napping, meridiatio, was common. Especially in warmer regions, it was customary for labourers and even senators to rest after lunch, avoiding the scorching sun. These naps might be brief or indulgent, taken on couches in shaded gardens or beside fountains, with servants fanning flies away. In this, Romans mirrored modern Mediterranean customs, recognising that productivity required rest, not constant labour. Within the army, sleep took on a different form entirely. Legionaries, ever disciplined, slept in formation, 8 to a tent, arranged like a miniature unit, even in slumber. Guards rotated through night watches. On campaign, soldiers often slept in armour or with swords nearby. Their dreams were often filled with omens, the weight of duty heavy, even as they lay still. A century's strength came not only from drills and discipline, but from cohesion. Even in the dark, a Roman soldier did not sleep alone. Children's sleep too carried meaning. Cradles were rare, but small children might sleep in baskets, swaddled tightly. Parents soothed them with lullabies, gentle chants, sometimes even invoking the household gods to ward off the evil eye. A sick child's rest was watched closely. A fevered sleep could mean recovery or death. The quiet breath of a sleeping infant was a sacred sound to Roman ears. As dawn approached, the world began to shift again. The first birds called from tile rooftops. Roosters, though not common in every home, marked the hour with unerring cries. Bakers stirred coals, fires were lit anew, and water was drawn from the courtyard cistern. In the wealthiest homes, slaves slipped silently into chambers, lighting lamps and preparing morning baths. In poorer households, children shook off sleep reluctantly, reaching for yesterday's clothes and a crust of bread. For the Roman world, night was not a boundary, but a breath, a necessary pause in the tide of labour, governance, trade, and worship. It gave space for dreams and recovery, for fears and revelations. Whether in silk-lined bedrooms or straw-strewn corners, Romans greeted the night with reverence, caution, and habit. And every evening, as the lamps were lit and shutters drawn, the city, vast and noisy though it was, closed its eyes once more. There was a ritual to nightfall in the Roman world, quiet but present in every class. As dusk spread its indigo hush over the terracotta roofs and marble porticos, Romans prepared not only their bodies for sleep, but their homes. Oil lamps were lit, small terracotta dishes with flickering wicks fed by pressed olive oil. In wealthier homes, bronze or silver versions cast softer, steadier light. Shadows danced across stuccoed walls and faded frescoes, their movement both comforting and mysterious. In the atriums of patrician villas, the last sounds of the day echoed, the gentle trickle of a fountain, the final brush of a broom over mosaic tiles, the distant clatter of gates closing. Slaves made their final rounds, drawing curtains, ensuring doors were latched, embers were safe, and their masters' bedrooms were prepared with fresh linens or cool cloths for the brow. In colder months, charcoal braziers were tended with care, never allowed to burn too hot. Smoke inhalation was a known risk. Even emperors had died in their sleep from such accidents, it was whispered. For ordinary citizens, the scene was humbler, but no less deliberate. In cramped insula, those tall, fire-prone apartment blocks, families gathered close in shared rooms. Simple oil lamps illuminated wooden beams and rough plaster walls. The evening meal, often cold and sparse, bread, cheese, olives, marked the last communal act before sleep. Children curled on mats, sharing thin blankets. Adults talked softly about debts, tomorrow's work, or gossiped about a neighbour's troubles. They were small moments of intimacy and familiarity, often the only peace in long, hard days. In rural areas, darkness fell heavier and faster. Far from the torches and lamps of the city, the countryside surrendered fully to the night. Farmers retired with the sun, exhausted from toil, but sometimes grateful for the quiet. The sounds of owls, insects, or distant wolves might drift in through shuttered windows. Livestock settled in barns or pens nearby, their breathing a subtle rhythm beneath the stars. For many Roman peasants, sleep was not a luxury, it was earned. Hard labour meant heavy rest, and dreams were seldom remembered. Yet sleep was not always uninterrupted. Romans did not conceive of sleep as a single continuous stretch. What we now call segmented sleep was the norm. After several hours of initial rest, many awoke for a short period, perhaps an hour or more, before returning to bed. This interlude was spent in a variety of ways: quiet prayer, conversation, light eating, even intimacy. Philosophers and poets spoke of this time as useful, reflective. Some believed it was when the mind was clearest, the soul closest to the divine. Evening prayers to household gods, Lares and Penates, were sometimes whispered in this middle time, offerings of incense or wine left behind earlier in the evening. For the deeply pious, dreams during second sleep were considered more truthful, less clouded by the body's restlessness. And so, sleep was not a destination, but a journey, punctuated with small awakenings and returns. Dream interpretation remained a quiet but persistent art. Entire books were dedicated to deciphering dreams, whether a snake portended betrayal or fertility, whether flying was a sign of coming wealth or danger. Artemidorus, a 2nd century Greek writer under Roman rule, catalogued thousands of dream symbols, treating them as psychological puzzles and divine whispers alike. A poor man dreaming of coins might be warned of theft. A noble dreaming of drowning might be urged to avoid political entanglements. While many dismissed such ideas, others lived by them, altering decisions or travel plans based on what they saw behind closed eyes. For those who struggled with sleep, be it from anxiety, illness, or age, remedies were available. Physicians recommended warm drinks made from poppy, lettuce, or vinegar. Herbal sachets were sometimes tucked beneath pillows, lavender, chamomile, or fennel believed to calm the mind. Soft music or the sound of water was thought to aid sleep, and wealthy Romans even had indoor fountains installed near bedrooms for this purpose. Philosophers like Seneca recommended moral reflection before bed, encouraging peace of conscience as the best pillow. In brothels, taverns, and way stations along Roman roads, sleep came harder. Travellers contended with strangers, unfamiliar beds, noise, and the unease of theft. Soldiers posted far from home took what sleep they could between watches. Traders and envoys lodged with innkeepers, often in flea-ridden straw beds with shared walls. Even here, though, some comforts were carried. Small oil lamps, travel pillows, personal charms, and household amulets. Sleep, wherever it occurred, remained personal. Despite the hardships, Romans did not fear the night. It was respected, yes, and its shadows watched with caution. But for many, sleep was a form of return, a descent into quiet where the weight of the day was loosened. Whether you were a senator or slave, merchant or soldier, sleep made all men equal for a few short hours. As night deepened and the city dimmed to a soft hush, the only sounds were that of breathing. Millions of chests rising and falling across marble villas, wooden homes, and countryside huts. Sleep had claimed the empire, not as conqueror, but as caretaker. Across the vast lands of the Roman Empire, from the cold, misty shores of Britannia to the sun-bleached sands of Syria, the rhythms of sleep carried on in quiet synchrony. Though divided by language, custom and climate, all Roman subjects eventually surrendered to the same night. Sleep, that ancient equalizer, softened the lines between senator and slave, patrician and plebeian. And yet, even sleep bore traces of class, geography and belief. In the warmer provinces, sleep arrangements adapted to the climate. In Egypt and southern Hispania, where evenings lingered hot and dry, people often slept on rooftops or in open courtyards, seeking whatever breeze they could. Bedrolls were light, sometimes nothing more than mats or woven reeds, and sleepwear was minimal or absent. The stars above became familiar companions, and the noises of the night, crickets, barking dogs, distant flutes, were not intrusions but a background symphony of living Rome. In colder provinces, thicker woolen blankets, animal hides, and even heated stones were used to warm beds before sleep. Some homes featured hypocauste systems, ingenious Roman floor heating designs that radiated warmth upward from below. Though rare outside elite villas, this technology made cold winter nights far more bearable. Those without such comforts huddled closer, shared warmth with family or livestock, and relied on the layering of tunics and cloaks as a final barrier against the chill. Roman children, much like children today, resisted sleep at times. Nurses and mothers would hum lullabies in Latin or Greek, stories of Hercules or the she-wolf who suckled Romulus and Remus. Soft melodies, perhaps accompanied by gentle tapping or a reed flute, lulled young ones into slumber. In richer homes, literate parents might read aloud from Homer or Virgil. Recitations meant both to educate and ease the mind. Story of gods and heroes, triumph and tragedy filled the imaginations of children, drifting off beneath heavy covers. Yet not everyone welcomed sleep easily. For those plagued by illness or stress, wakefulness was a familiar torment. Insomnia was not unknown in ancient Rome. Pliny the Elder wrote of treatments, poppy seed infusions, barley water with honey, and warm baths taken by torchlight. Some Romans turned to prayers and rituals, whispering invocations to Somnus, the god of sleep, or even Morpheus, the shaper of dreams. Offerings might include small cakes or scented oils, left on altars in the hope of divine rest. Among soldiers, sleep was often fragmented. Roman legionaries were trained to rest lightly, to remain alert, even in slumber. On campaign, men slept in tightly organised tents, ate to a contubernium, sharing straw mattresses and cloaks. Guards rotated through watches, and every rustle outside the camp palisade was met with tense ears. In those hard, fleeting hours of rest, dreams came quickly and faded faster. It was a different kind of sleep, necessary but never indulgent. For the enslaved, sleep was dictated entirely by their masters. Some had designated quarters, often cramped and near kitchens or storage rooms. Others, especially in agriculture or mining, collapsed wherever labour ended. Many slept on straw without linens and rose before the sun. Still, even within these brutal circumstances, sleep offered escape. In the dark, a slave might dream of home, or of freedom, or of nothing at all. It was the one place where even chains could not follow. Meanwhile, philosophers and Stoics wrote of sleep as a kind of death, a trial run for the final silence. Seneca pondered whether one should fear death if every night was a willing surrender of consciousness. Marcus Aurelius noted in his meditations that sleep refreshed the body, but a just life refreshed the soul. These thoughts accompanied the Roman elite into bed, where they might reflect upon virtue, fate, and mortality before drifting away. In temples, priests observed sacred sleep, known as incubatio, where worshippers would lie within sanctuaries, hoping to receive divine visions or healing in their dreams. The sick would rest on sheepskins or marble slabs, invoking gods like Asclepius. Temple attendants interpreted dreams in the morning, prescribing cures or penances. These rituals blurred the line between rest and revelation, and for many, sleep became a portal to the gods. And through it all, the empire slept. Traders in seaside towns, mothers in hilltop villages, smiths in smoky workshops, all lay beneath the same moon, soothed by its pale glow on tiles and stone. The fires dimmed, voices hushed, and the world softened. In that hush, in that long exhale of the Roman night, one could almost feel the heartbeat of an ancient people still pulsing beneath time's dust. As the final embers of the hearth curled upward in thin, lazy tendrils, and the last murmurs of conversation faded beneath tiled roofs and flickering oil lamps, the Roman world fell deeper into its nightly stillness. Across the empire, sleep had settled like a great silken veil, delicate and near sacred, covering every town, village, and villa. From marble porticos in the heart of Rome to wind-battered watchtowers on the fringes of Gaul, the hush of night was everywhere. Within the great capital itself, the city never quite slept, but it did dream. The Tiber whispered against its banks, and lantern light from late-night wanderers bounced along cobblestones slick with dew. In the Subura, the poor and weary stretched their limbs across straw and rags, their bellies faintly warmed by stew and hopes of better days. Even the noise of the city softened to something rhythmic, like the steady breathing of a giant asleep. Inside wealthier domus homes, the architecture itself was designed for peace. Bedrooms faced inward, away from the street, around cool atriums or shaded courtyards. Mosaic floors glimmered faintly under moonlight, and stone walls trapped the quiet like a promise. The rustle of linen, the creak of a wooden bed frame, the sigh of a satisfied sleeper, all were notes in the nighttime symphony. The elite, their bodies bathed in oils and minds calmed by philosophy or poetry, found their rest behind drawn curtains of dyed wool and embroidered cloth. The deeper into the night the empire went, the more the ancient belief in dreams came alive. For Romans, dreams were not idle illusions, but messages, often divine, sometimes prophetic. They could warn, inspire, or confuse. A soldier might dream of falling from his horse and worry at foretold defeat. A senator might dream of an eagle and believe it signified power or approaching change. Dream interpreters were common, and entire texts like Artemidorus's Oneirocritica were devoted to unravelling their meanings. Even commoners, with little formal learning, clung to their own dream symbols. Losing a shoe might mean betrayal. Seeing a storm at sea could signify family trouble. And yet, most dreams went unrecorded, lived only for a fleeting breath before they dissolved in the morning light, much like the dreams we know today. Sleep also reflected the vastness and diversity of the Roman world. In the mountains of Dacia, men slept beside their herds in stone shelters, while in desert outposts of Arabia Petraea, soldiers wrapped themselves in woolen cloaks against the chill. In Gaul, women wove thick winter linens for their children's beds. In Mauritania, families cooled their homes with open shutters and palm fans. All of them Roman in name, yet shaped by their land and sky, by local gods and ancestral customs. And always, sleep came in cycles. A Roman might wake in the middle of the night to stoke a dying flame, visit the latrine, or check on a crying child. Some even rose for a brief time to read, think, or pray, before returning to bed for a second phase of slumber. This segmented sleep was not unusual. It was natural, expected, and woven into the night without worry or shame. The black screen of sleep held all these people, all their lives and worries and comforts, in one vast embrace, and when morning came, it came not all at once but slowly. First with a chirp of birds in olive trees, the clink of amphora being prepared for the day's bread and wine, the yawn of oxen stirred from their stalls. Light crept into homes like a patient guest, golden and gentle. One by one, the Romans rose. They folded blankets, stretched arms, and rubbed sleep from their eyes with no thought of alarm clocks or schedules. The sun itself was the timekeeper, and the body followed its arc. The rituals of the day would begin again: work, worship, commerce, duty. But for a few quiet breaths, the world hovered on the edge of waking, and in that liminal space the last wisps of dreams still clung like mist. Sleep in the Roman world was not merely a biological necessity, it was a cultural experience. It shaped architecture, medicine, religion, and the rhythm of life. It offered both rest and meaning, and like all great aspects of Roman civilization, it endured, layered, complex, and deeply human. So now, as you lie in your own quiet room, surrounded by the hush of the modern world, consider how ancient your need for sleep truly is. It is the same rest longed for by emperors and farmers, gladiators and scribes, mothers and children, all now long gone. And as the fire crackles beside you and your eyelids grow heavy, know that in this moment you are not alone. You are joined by generations before you who closed their eyes to the dark and dreamed. Thank you for joining me beneath the shadow of Rome to explore the quiet and curious world of ancient sleep. Until we meet again, may your dreams be soft and your rest be deep. Good night.